Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with a triumphant Nick Whalen joining us right now. Nick, how good is it to be you right now?
Man, I mean, it was a big night in the Whalen basement. I'll tell you that. At one point, I had a Byron Leftwich jersey on under a CC Sabathia Brewers jersey. I mean, this was either going to be a great sports night or a terrible sports night for me. I felt like there was going to be no in between. Got off to a very rough start, both for the Brewers, who immediately give up a 3-run homer, and then of course the Jaguars down 14-0 early in that game against Kansas City. I know we both have some thoughts on Monday Night Football, but Jeff, I don't want to delay the breaking news here that we had about an hour ago as we record this on Tuesday afternoon. Congratulations. The Joe Flacco tour of the AFC North continues. He has swooped in to save the Cincinnati Bengals season.
Oh, he can't swoop. He's too old to swoop. I'm too old to swoop. There will be no swooping involved here. He'll be dropped in, and it'll be a disaster. This is a guy that Joe Flacco just got benched by the Cleveland Browns on merit. He was, as you brought it up, had the 50th EPA in passing among all NFL quarterbacks, only ahead of Jake Browning. Before this trade, he got benched by merit. He was terrible in Indy last year. 2023 is a fun little story. I think it was a bit of a mirage, and that's not happening again here. Even with the skill positions that he has to work with, I hope I'm really aggressively wrong on this one, Nick, but I am so not optimistic about that.
Look, I'm not super optimistic about it either. I'm looking at some of the advanced numbers. Not that we even need the advanced numbers to really, double down on what the eye test has shown. And I do want to keep in mind, like he's been playing for the Browns, so he's been in a terrible situation. I don't think a whole lot of quarterbacks in the NFL would have impressive numbers playing for the Browns so far, given how those games have gone. But dead last among all quarterbacks who played at least 50 snaps in terms of total EPA. He is 35th out of 37 in EPA per play. Only Jake Browning and JJ McCarthy have been worse. He's actually dead last when you just isolate the passing EPA because obviously he does not have any mobility whatsoever. And then in terms of success rate, also dead last out of 37 quarterbacks. Cam Ward and McCarthy are really the only two that are even in the same neighborhood. So, I mean, it's obviously a desperation situation here for Cincinnati. The reporting from me and Rappaport from Adam Schefter implied that they've been making calls over the last 48 hours. I think something set in that Detroit game where they just kind of realized we can't keep doing this with Jake Browning. Whatever magic he had at times in the past, whatever magic he discovered against the Jaguars to somehow win that game, it just hasn't been there. I mean, the Bengals were being outscored, I think, going into the fourth quarter against Detroit. It was, I tweeted it out. I don't have the number now. It was like 108 to like 16 or something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. So the problem with all this is like watching Cincinnati these last couple of weeks, obviously not having Joe Burrow is a major, major problem, but they have so many other issues that even if Joe Flacco does raise your floor, even if he plays closer to 2023, 2024, Joe Flacco, that doesn't help the running game to me all that much, maybe marginally. It's not really doing anything for the offensive line. In fact, having somebody less mobile back there maybe hurts you even more. The defense remains a colossal issue. So to me, it's kind of a no change, maybe a slight upgrade just because of the history of Joe Flacco stepping into these situations. If you're trying to assess what this means for T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, but I know you as a Bengals fan don't really feel any differently about how the rest of this season plays out.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not enthused about this move. I understand why it happened. It probably some move had to happen. Although I think the Bengals are not just a league average quarterback away from fixing what ails them, and yet it's still gettable. The Ravens are having their season from hell. They're 1-4 with and a heavy underdog this upcoming week against the Rams. Then they go into their bye. They'll probably fix some things, but their defense looks like it's long-term unfixable for at least, I think it's going to be a while before they fix things themselves. Point is, I think that this is a gettable division. I think Pittsburgh and Cleveland and maybe even Cleveland are better positioned right now, even though Cleveland is 1-4. The Bengals had that banked win against the Jaguars, the banked win against the Browns, but there's an opportunity to be had. So they're having it, I guess, is the way to look at it. They're hoping that Burrow comes back in December and that'll fix some of those things. The throws were so bad by Browning. I get it. Moose Johnston was going nuts trying to broadcast this game, justifiably so. There's no doubt Browning was terrible. Couple good throws late, Nick. You made that throw to Chase that Chase made an incredible catch on, but it was also a great throw. He is capable of good things at times. That's what's so beguiling.
He is. I think the idea here with Flacco is that he's equally capable of making the good throws, and he's probably going to make slightly fewer bad throws. And it kind of felt like he was just winging it at times through these first few games with Cleveland in ways that he has at times in the past. But like there were some just kind of reckless throws, some just kind of giving up on plays that you typically don't see with Joe Flacco. And it's not like Cincinnati is a dramatically better situation competitively, right? It's like the Bengals and the Browns, like you said, you even feel better about the Browns somehow, mounting a playoff charge. I don't think either of those teams are going to end up making it. Cincinnati, by the way, is 7-1 right now to make the postseason, but at least you have weaponry. You have proven weaponry in Cincinnati. Like you're no longer throwing to Isaiah Bond and Jamari Thrash and Cedric Tillman. You got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins. My hope is that, I don't know how this happens, but they need to find a way to get Chase Brown going. Like the total lack of a running game. And it's not even me sitting here complaining about my Chase Brown fantasy shares. It's like, it's just not even a threat week to week. Like, they try it every single week. First few drives, they run Chase Brown. He has like 9 yards on 6 carries, and then you have no choice but to go away from it.
Yeah, I think that's right. It destroys play action because it's not a real threat. It allows teams to not have to stack the box. It does a lot of things that really change it all up there for them there. A couple other takeaways here, and we'll move on from that. But I think the Giants. What are the Giants asking for Jameis Winston? What are they asking for Russell Wilson? How did this not happen first? Frankly, I would have preferred Burrow. I would have preferred those two over Flacco.
Yeah.
The Giants have 3 quarterbacks. They don't need 3 quarterbacks. It was the price. How was the price that appreciably higher that they turned in division and traded for Flacco? I guess it must have been.
Yeah, I wonder that too, because I'm sure that call was made, and the price couldn't have been that much higher, right? I mean, it's like Cincinnati is the most desperate team. Like there will be another team that loses a quarterback, and that's what you're holding out for if you're the Giants, but you have not one but 2 guys that in theory you'd be okay trading. Like they seem very committed to Jackson Dart going forward. I mean, I think Brian Daboll has wanted this all along, and in the event that Jackson Dart goes down, like your franchise right now is kind of tethered to Jackson Dart. I think their season is over. It's more about the future. You could just go pick somebody up if you have to limp your way through the rest of the season. So yeah, I don't know what the asking price was for either of those guys. I mean, paying basically they flipped a 5th and a 6th, in exchange for Flacco.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it was a whole lot higher than that. And I'm with you. I would rather have Russ. I would rather have the berserker that is Jameis Winston. But I guess just to put a bow on this conversation, do you, when you're going through and doing your value meter this week, Bengals, of course, are big underdogs on the road at the Green Bay Packers. Packers coming off of a bye. We did see some big line movement, by the way. Went from 14.5 down to 14 after this trade.
Huge if true.
Do you factor this in at all when you're ranking Jamar Chase, when you're ranking T. Higgins this week?
Maybe. No, probably I won't. Probably about the same, actually, to be honest. I still think it's a terrible matchup still. I don't know. I probably won't change it appreciably there. Maybe a couple notches. I mean, Chase, you saw Chase is capable of what he did every single week. It helped that Terry and Arnold got hurt, by the way, and the Lions had other injuries in their secondary. That had an aspect to that as well. But still, the Packers, I mean, the one good news bit about the Bengals Packers matchup is if there's a weakness in the Green Bay defense, it's in their secondary also. So that's about the only thing that's a positive there. It just makes me think, though, that the Bengals decided, okay, we'll find out which one costs the least for us, and we'll do that option as opposed to who is the best player. And maybe the Giants were saying, give us a third, or because I did hear like Jameis for a third. I think I heard rumored out there, but no, I don't see that there. But I think it is going to be a really bad spot there. All right, let's go to your Jaguars here. They're 4-1. They win on the national stage. They get Seattle coming to town this weekend. How real is this?
I think it's real in the sense that I now have to view the Jaguars as a playoff contender. Certainly, they're 4-1. They probably should be 5-0. I mean, every team can look back at least one game and say, "Oh, we probably should have won that." But I feel strongly about that Week 2 game against Cincinnati, where Browning came in and threw 3 picks and somehow still won. I think this has been an evaluation period these last 3 weeks for me. Texans, Niners, Chiefs, and the Jaguars have passed that test, 3-0 in those 3 games, caught some breaks with the 49ers injuries, of course, and, caught a few breaks last night. But I thought actually for a lot of the game, Kansas City, as is typical, was getting the benefit of some calls. I mean, the no call on the interception by Lawrence was one of the worst that you'll ever see. Just a receiver getting completely taken out. Lawrence ends up throwing it right to a defender. I thought Lawrence crossed the plane on the over-the-top QB quote-unquote sneak, but it was close enough. I'm not going to whine about that one. And then I thought it was pretty clear PI on Brian Thomas in the end zone at the end. But I mean, this was the exact game. And you could say this about the 49ers game too. And even the Houston game, like the Jaguars always lose those games. It's these, hanging in the balance with 10 minutes left. You just know that mistake is coming. And I mean, for a moment last night when Trevor Lawrence gets stepped on at the 2-yard line and goes down, you're thinking, all right, they're going to do it again. They've drove all the way down the field. They're in the red zone. They're about to punctuate this, and they're going to find a way to mess it up. And the fact that they have not done that now in 3 straight weeks, it feels kind of like a new era of Jaguars football, to be honest. And I think we're seeing the Liam Cohen difference in terms of how this offensive line is playing. It was not a great night overall, I didn't think, for the Jags defense. You had the huge play by Devin Lloyd that completely changed this game. Chiefs were out to a 14-0 lead. That kind of felt like, all right, we're back in control if we punch this in. And my handicap on this game, Jeff, the reason I thought the Chiefs were going to win and cover is because I thought Trevor Lawrence would be the quarterback who would make the big mistake, the mistake that would lose Jacksonville the game. I'm still in shock that Mahomes made that throw.
Yeah, and my follow-up is the Chiefs are now sitting at 2-3, and this is the type of game they always win.
Yes.
This is always they win these sort of games, and they didn't.
Yeah, they're 0-3 in one-score games.
Harrison Butker has the kickoff go out of bounds.
Yep.
The Jaguars start on the 40 on that drive. I think that's underrated as an aspect of that. We saw Ted mentioned that the holding penalty on the Chiefs kickoff return. I'm not sure it's awful, but it was borderline maybe. It's the thing that Chiefs don't ever do. They start on the 17. The Jaguars start on the 40.
They had multiple penalties on kickoffs, kickoff returns last night. It was odd. I didn't love the call at the end that basically, didn't really give Kansas City a chance to mount a final drive, but they were going to be up against it no matter what. It was under 30 seconds left on the clock. KC still put up 476 yards of total offense on this Jags defense. So I'm not panicking on Kansas City. It is definitely weird to see them lose all these games that they were winning last year, but that is also how it tends to happen. When you have one of these seasons where you win every 1-score game, typically that does come back around the following year. So maybe we shouldn't be shocked, but I think we started to see some holes in the Jacksonville defense. Not having Trayvon Walker out there, I thought was a really big deal, especially against the run. I mean, no Kansas City back had a massive game, but they were ripping off 7.2 yards per attempt on the ground. And part of that was Patrick Mahomes, going 6 for 60, but Kareem Hunt had an explosive. I thought Isaiah Pacheco probably looked the best that he's looked in 2 years last night. So I'm not panicking if I'm Kansas City. It's tough because you got to turn around and host the Detroit Lions this week on Sunday Night Football. You lose that game, you're 2-4. And yeah, you have Rashee Rice coming back, but that's still a reasonable hole that you have to dig yourself out of. With that said, the Chargers have lost 2 in a row. Denver's 3-2. Even if the Chiefs do drop to 2-4, I think you still have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, they just have a tough schedule the rest of the way too, because
they do.
They're the Chiefs. They have a tough schedule. That's what they do. This game against the Lions, though, is very interesting to me. Banger of a game. Chiefs are now up to a 2.5-point favorite. I think it was actually 3 at one point. I like the Lions side of this. Actually, no, I think it was 1.5, and I think it's gone up to 2.5. Yeah. So I liked it. But I liked the Lions when it was at 1.5. I certainly like it at 2.5, which means I'm probably wrong. But I think the Lions are going to move the ball against the Chiefs. I'm not convinced the Chiefs defense is all well and good here.
I mean, the total's at 52.5. So the book agrees with you on that.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a game that, it's vitally important for the Chiefs for sure. And maybe the Knicks, maybe the Lions. I don't know why I say Knicks. I don't know what I'm even looking at there. That makes me say that, but maybe the Lions, they're kind of a little fat and happy at 4-1 now. I don't know, but
some injuries in that secondary, I think could kind of open the door here for Kansas City. And I haven't really made up my mind on that one. I think I lean Chiefs, but yeah, like you said, I mean, Jacksonville, after a pretty sluggish start to this game, was able to move the ball pretty effectively. As we expected, was not a big day on the ground. Chiefs run defense has been really good since that week 1 disaster against the Chargers. ETN goes just 12 for 49. They tried a few runs with Bashal Tutin. He was getting nothing. I mean, those guys combined for 55 yards on 16 carries. But I also think, it was a quintessential Trevor Lawrence game. Like he did throw an interception, even though it should have been penalized. It was still a killer. We had the delay of game on the last possession. We had the egregious sack when you can't lose yardage. And more importantly, you can't keep the clock running and have to burn a timeout in that situation. So like people who are not watching the Jaguars week to week, I think their eyes were opened to what Jaguars fans have been seeing for a long time. But at the same time, Trevor Lawrence delivers probably the best throw of his season, maybe the best throw he's had in 2 or 3 years down the sideline to Brian Thomas that ended up setting up that game-winning drive.
Yep. And it's tying into that fantasy meatball ass is all well with Brian Thomas Jr. now. He didn't have a gaffe in this game. There were no drops. There were no he ran the wrong route or anything like that.
No, and it's still not a monster fantasy day for him by any means. Jags only ran 54 plays in this game, so that was part of it. It ended up being more of a high volume passing game for Mahomes, who had 41 attempts compared to just 25 for Trevor Lawrence. So when your quarterback's only throwing it 25 times, you kind of need to be a massive target vacuum to capitalize on that. And he was the target, of course, on that PI play in the end zone. So at least you like to see the usage there. 4 for 80. I think you'll take that for Brian Thomas. And like you said, the confidence at least seems to be moving in the right direction for him. Like that throw, that catch that he made between 2 defenders on the sideline, like a week or 2 ago, I don't know if he's bringing that in. So I think you have to be encouraged. We can move on from this game, but just fantasy wise, Travis Hunter obviously had a huge catch over the middle, just elevated right over 2 defenders. He goes 3 for 64, caught all 3 of his targets, seeing that shiftiness after the catch, had a couple short receptions where he picked up 7 or 8 extra yards, just juking around guys. And then Jacksonville played, the bulk of the second half without Brenton Strange, who I think they called it a hip injury. And I saw the play, wasn't touched. It was just running a route over the middle and then started grabbing at his hip. I really like Brenton Strange. I think he was somebody you could basically get for free at the end of a lot of drafts, and unclear at this time if he's going to be missing any games.
Indeed. We're going to talk about more reactions to the Week 5 slate and talk about Survivor Chaos. First, quick note from our friends at Circa. It's football season, and the best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. Stadium Swim has 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. From owner's suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. We play in various Circa events. You play in Circa Millions. I play in Circa Survivor. Week 5 brought the madness, Nick. We saw 2/3 of the remaining pool wiped out in one day, basically. We went from over 12,000 to start today to 4,700 to end the week. Start the week, I should say, to end the week there. Starting with Rams and Niners. And the funny thing, Nick, is we've done our reaction shows on SiriusXM. Because it was a Thursday night game, we didn't really give full service to this Rams-Niners game. So I figured let's do it here a little bit.
Yeah, we saw a huge swath of the remaining entries in Circa Survivor and probably a lot of Survivor pools go out in this game. Obviously, a ton went out on Arizona as well. This is one, Jeff, where I feel foolish for just kind of following the crowd and looking at the Niners injury report and saying, oh, there's no way they'll compete. It's a division game. You still have a really good head coach in Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Niners, end up winning this game outright. It was one, and you often see this in these straight up upsets when you're talking about north of a touchdown on the number. Like there were just some signs early on, the fumble for the Rams on the second possession, Stafford after the Niners marched down for a touchdown, Stafford just missing a wide open, I think it was Tutu Atwell along the sideline for what would have been a big gain. They end up punting, and all of a sudden you're down 14-0 and kind of starting to envision this game getting away from you. And the Rams just made mistake after mistake in the second half, even when they were able to start getting some stops on the Niners. I mean, the Kyron Williams fumble was brutal, not being able to finish off that drive in overtime. You can't pick up 1 yard on a banged up Niners defense. But I came away really impressed by Mac Jones, man, who I thought died at one point in this game, took a hit to the knee and it was just like lifeless. They go to commercial and he's back. He didn't even miss a snap.
Yep.
But this is now 3 starts for Mac Jones where they're not treating him like a backup. I mean, he has to be considered, maybe the best backup in the NFL right now. He's on the short list. And if you're kind of looking for who could be the next Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold reclamation project type, it's like, I think Mac Jones would be the guy I would pick right now. I mean, the volume has been there every single game that he started, 39, 41, then 49 passing attempts on Thursday night. So I think the Niners kind of realize that they're struggling to run the ball right now. They have not been afraid whatsoever to put the ball in the hands of Mac Jones.
Yeah. If I'm a veteran quarterback down on his luck, or even a young veteran quarterback down on his luck, I am begging my agent to get me signed with the Niners. I don't care if you're the backup to Brock Purdy. He resuscitates your career. Look at Darnold. Look at now Mac Jones. I mean, it's just, it's some Shanahan magic. I think the scripting is so good. The play calling is so good. That goes a really long way. Shanahan out coached McVay in this game. That was one of my takeaways there, is that it was not just the play calling early, but the play calling, like McVay choosing to run that play on 4th down and overtime. Like, Stafford's carving apart this reclamation defense for the Niners, 389 passing yards, and they run it into the pile with Kyren Williams. When you look at all the advanced stats that showed that the Niners, that's the one thing they can do, is stop short yardage runs. That's what they do. And that's what you decided to go do anyhow. And McVay even acknowledged it after the game.
Yeah, you kind of got the sense that they almost overthought that play a little bit, and you don't want to come down too hard on any coach, especially Sean McVay in that situation, because if they pick it up, then we're saying, all right, what a great call, and it's always going to be a 50-50. If you run a pass play there, and it goes off a receiver's hands, then you're saying, why don't you run it? So I think that the Rams and McVay would tell you just shouldn't have come down to that, and it was just kind of a series of errors that led to them being in that position, but. At the end of the day, the Rams still put up 456 yards of offense. They were over 7 yards per play. But the Niners, again, did such a good job converting 3rd down after 3rd down, keeping the ball away from the Rams throughout this game as they're trying to mount this comeback. The Niners ran 83 plays. I know there was overtime, but there was only 1 OT possession, 83 plays compared to 64 for the Rams. Time of possession was 40 minutes to 26 minutes in favor of San Francisco. They picked up 7 3rd down conversions. They were 3 for 3 on 4th down. Just Mac Jones converting when he absolutely had to. Yeah,
it was drips and drabs. They took what was given to them and they did it over and over and over again. It was the Kendrick Bourne game. It was the Jake Tonjes game. Of course, McCaffrey got his early and often and all throughout there, and all in the passing game. By the way, they can't run the ball right now. That is one of the takeaways, that they really are bad at running the ball.
Yes, they are. And, it's impressive that Christian McCaffrey is having the season that he is, considering what the rushing production has been. I mean, he touched the ball, 30 times on Thursday night. 8 of those are receptions. In terms of just pure rushing numbers, he's averaging 18 carries a week for 56 total yards. And he does not have a rushing touchdown yet on the season. But when you're catching 8 passes for 77 yards per game, especially in full PPR, that's going to make you one of the best running backs in fantasy. So I think it's fair to wonder, this dependency on CMC, which we always knew would be there to some degree. Can he keep handling this kind of workload, 25, 30 touches every week? But with the way the injuries are trending, at least in the short term for San Francisco, I think that has to be the plan. And look, if Pearsall and or Jennings are out again this week, Niners are on the road at the Buccaneers in the late window on Sunday. I think this is another spot where I'd be okay firing up Kendrick Bourne. I mean, you have to temper your expectations. Maybe that was the best case on Thursday night, but teams can't really run on Tampa Bay. You certainly can't run up the middle on the Buccaneers. I think this is another game where we see Mac Jones let it fly 30, 35 times. And, if Pearsall and Jennings are out again, which we have no information as we record this, we know Kittle's not going to be out there. I think we're looking at Kendrick Bourne as wide receiver 1 again in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I was amazed, by the way, Kenneth Walker had a pretty successful day running the ball against the Bucs. No other running back has. Barkley hasn't. Bijan hasn't. This is a team that wasn't allowing rushing yards to the running backs, and yet somehow, Walker figured out a way. But I don't think that McCaffrey will be able to find rushing lanes. I think he'll be heavily involved in the passing game, though. I also think that this Niners defense, without Nick Bosa especially, they're vulnerable. I think they got a little lucky in this game. That's where the survivor luck kicked in. The Kyren fumble at the goal line, play call at the end of the game, a missed field goal in there. This should never have gotten to that point.
No, it shouldn't have, but that's, when a team goes down as a 8-point favorite, there's a confluence of events that have to happen in order for that to be the case. And I know we'll talk Arizona, Tennessee at some point, but it's
That's
never
next,
just
yep.
like, they just got beat. It's like, no, there are like 5 things you can point to for why this went off the rails. We did get a question earlier in the show, by the way, from Luis here. Speaking of that Seattle running game, he asked for this week, would you start Charbonnet against Jacksonville, or would you roll the dice on one of the Chargers running backs? So this is a good segue to talk about Omarion Hampton.
Yeah. Let's talk about that real quick here. Omarion, and we got another question about that too. So Omarion Hampton out for 4 to 6 weeks with this ankle injury. He's already been placed on IR. The Chargers offensive line is the real problem for me here. That it's not even a Vidal versus Haskins thing, although it is kind of, but I just think without Joe Alt, who's probably not going to play again, without Rashawn Slater, they lost Mekhi Becton for periods of time. They lost Pipkins for a little bit of time there. It's a disaster. The interior offensive line was already bad, and now it's banged up too for the Chargers. Even though they're playing Miami, this is like it's the resistible force versus the movable object. It's really a tough spot here. Rico Dowdle went for 200 yards against Miami. Should be any running back that could do well against Miami, except the Chargers offensive line is just an utter total mess right now.
So it is. I'm not disputing anything you said. One, I think there's a chance they could get Joe Alt back this week. We'll see. He was doubtful heading into week 5. I mean, I don't know. We don't get a lot of information on offensive line injuries, especially, but I think there's at least a chance that he could be back. Mm-hmm. And in that Giants game in week 4, despite having a battered offensive line, we still saw Hampton go 12 for 128 against that Giants defense, which it is the Giants. But the Dolphins, I mean, this is the ideal matchup, man. Miami is last in EPA per play defensively, last in success rate, last in EPA per rush allowed. Just gave up almost a franchise record day to the Panthers' backup running back this past week in Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle was being used so heavily that he was cramping and was in and out at the end of the game. The Dolphins have given up 137 more rushing yards than any other team. So I absolutely love this matchup, offensive line issues aside, for the Chargers. It's just a question of picking the right guy. To me, I think we see Haskins get the first crack at it. If you look at just the raw snaps from last week, Vidal and Haskins split relatively evenly behind Omarion Hampton. For what it's worth, we saw Hassan Haskins get 6 snaps before the injury compared to just 2 for Vidal. Haskins got the first crack right after Hampton went out. I think he played 8 of the next 9 snaps immediately. And a lot of that work for Vidal, when you look at the total snaps, came on the final drive or 2 of the game when Trey Lance was out there and the Chargers decided to wave the white flag. So to me, Vidal's the more exciting player, but I think we see Haskins kind of get the lion's share of the workload to begin.
So to that end, Fantasy Meatball asks, if you're in a fab league, how much of a percentage would you use on one of those backs? Try to get both and see how it goes. Just get one of them. How would you handle it free agent bidding wise?
Yeah, I guess I don't hate the idea of getting both. I would rather probably just target one or the other and lean toward Haskins. I mean, to me, this is, I don't know what the first number that comes to mind would be like 35%. I mean, keep in mind this, we don't think this is a season-ending injury for Omarion Hampton. So you're still looking at, what could only be 3, 4, 5 games. And, the Miami game is the big appeal here. After that, they play Indy and Minnesota. And those are 2 games in a 5-day span. The Minnesota game is on Thursday night. So really, like the Miami game is the one that I really want these guys for. If you miss out beyond that, I don't know that it'll be devastating. And there's also the chance that the Chargers could bring someone in from the outside, whether that's via trade or they call up Gus Edwards, who's just hanging out right now. That's a real possibility. But in the short term, I think this is a really good spot for Haskins.
Yeah, I'm counting 6 more games before they have their bye. Also, unlucky you have the late bye on this one here.
Yeah, well, that could also kind of inform the timeline on Hampton too.
Comes back after a battle at Jacksonville. Comes back for home games against the Raiders and Eagles after the bye. So I could see that happening there a little bit. All right, let's talk about the Rams and Niners. We were talking Survivor Madness. Rams and Niners were the highest pick game on Circa Survivors contest. The second highest pick was the Arizona Cardinals over the Tennessee Titans. That did not go very well, and it was not only did it not very go well, it was the most Chargers loss. I mean, God, I'm saying weird things. Most Cardinals. It is the most Chargers loss ever too, but it is also the most Cardinals loss ever.
Yeah, it was the most Cardinals loss. It was the most Jets, Jaguars, Raiders
Bengals.
loss, Bengals. Yeah. Man, I mean, we talked after that Rams Eagles game about, man, I don't think there's going to be a worse beat. And I still think in terms of just like betting a side, losing Rams 3.5 or 4.5 on a blocked field goal return for a meaningless touchdown is still worse than like losing Cardinals -8.5, which was always going to be a dubious number no matter what. But my goodness, man. My goodness. If Amari DiMercato hangs onto that ball, it's 28-6. The game is totally over at that point. And I don't know what to say about that. I don't want to have a discussion about like these coaches got to get on their guys. Like I think it's just going to keep happening. I don't know. I've never scored a touchdown at any meaningful level, so I don't really know what this feels like or why I would have this urge to drop the ball right as I'm about to go over the goal line, but it is what it is. The fumbled interception, man, just an all-time stupid play. All time. Like you fumble without even being touched. You just go to the ground, you lose the ball. There were 3 Cardinals who could have jumped on the ball. You see it from the reverse angle. One of the Cardinals defenders bats the ball into the end zone. I think he just kind of forgot where he was. And instead of just grabbing the ball, bats it right into Tyler Lockett's hands. The worst part of all this though, Jeff, is that the Titans were still trailing after getting that crazy break, 2 crazy breaks. In fact, the Cardinals still have a chance to ice this game against the worst team in the NFL. Tennessee had 2 timeouts, and you had the 2-minute warning coming up. They had 3 timeouts. They burned 2 of them. I think there's 2:07 on the clock. It's 3rd and 8. You just run the ball. You just basically punt on that drive. And Jonathan Gannon was asked about that on Tuesday in his presser. And he's like, yeah, I didn't love the call. Our OC, he didn't love the call either. We thought about taking a timeout. We decided not to. And he just gave a non-answer, basically. And it was he essentially admitted we knew that play wasn't going to work, and we ran it anyway. I just don't see I don't see the logic in not throwing the ball there, not trying to pick up that third down, because you have the 2-minute warning. What are we working toward here? Like the clock is going to stop no matter what. And I guess I understand this argument of, all right, we don't want some disastrous to happen. Let's make them go 80 yards on our defense. Well, they did. They went right down the field on you.
Yeah, they did. They really did. And, all of a sudden it became, Cam Ward became sentient. He became continent there. And, it was pretty wild to see, just to see how good Cam Ward became on that whole sequence there. Really, really interesting there as far as that goes. I gotta say though, there's a lot of things that happened in this here. It was, there was a lot of talk about, the no change in the play calling for the Cardinals. Gannon's apologizing for tearing into DiMercato on the sidelines, kind of maybe making contact with him while going nuts. But how could you not go nuts?
Yeah, I'm not a Gannon guy, but I think you're right to light up a player after something like that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. I understand. Maybe he made contact with him, and if he did make contact with him, and okay, then we have a different discussion. Other than that, though, I mean, you got to light up the player there for that. It's a crushing mistake. It didn't lose the game for the Cardinals, but it prevented them from cementing the game for the Cardinals. And I think we need to talk about that. Tennessee, there's so many other weird things that happened in this game. Tennessee, they missed the extra point after that interception, fumble, touchdown. They shouldn't have even been kicking in the first place. They should have been going for 2 there. They didn't, because Brian Callahan doesn't get it as far as that goes. There's the Kyler snap fumble where it hits him in the face mask because he thought that it was a dead play. He didn't go after the ball even. Then goes and gets examined for a foot injury after that play, which was also kind of like, I didn't see a foot injury there, but oh well. I was worried he was concussed at first, because he kind of recoiled after getting hit. There was the Kyler intentional grounding earlier in the game where he just flicks it away. It was as bad of an intentional grounding as I've ever seen it. You could argue that should be a fumble. I mean, there should be like a double penalty when it's that bad of an intentional grounding. There's just so many weird things happening in this game.
If you were on Twitter after the game, seeing Cardinals fans' reaction, like this felt like a franchise changing type of loss. I mean, they were calling for Kyler Murray's head. You're calling for Gannon's head. You're calling for ownership's head. I mean, this is as bad as it gets, man. And I think, obviously if DiMercato just walks into the end zone, it's 28-6. We're not having any of these conversations, but I still think we saw a lot of the issues with this offense, which is not trusting Kyler Murray, which is getting a big play immediately from Marvin Harrison Jr. and then targeting him 4 more times the rest of the game. We still don't have a ton of clarity necessarily on this running back situation. It certainly looks like it's going to be Michael Carter. I don't know what level of doghouse DeMarcado is going to land in. Bam Knight ended up vulturing a touchdown in the second half. But for fantasy purposes, Michael Carter did outsnap DeMarcado 39-19. He was targeted 5 times, 0 targets out of the backfield for DeMarcado. And again, we'll see if DeMarcado is in jail for this week. On the Titans side of things, a couple of notes here fantasy-wise. We did see Tajay Spears make his debut. Only played 17 snaps, no impact on the game, wasn't targeted. Callahan did come out and say they want to extend that. They want to get him more involved this week. We'll see. They are playing the Raiders, so there should be some opportunity there. But Tennessee is dead last in the NFL in terms of the rate at which they throw to running backs. Only 9% of targets have gone to the running back position. So if they're going to get Tajay Spears involved in the role where he thrives, they're going to have to up that. Keeping an eye on Chigakonko, by the way. I mean, I know we're talking deep tight ends here, but Gunnar Helm outsnapped and out-targeted Chigakonko in this game. They split snaps pretty much evenly. And then Calvin Ridley actually saw reduced snaps for the second week in a row, only played 44 out of 67. Of course, came up with the biggest play of the game, that catch down the field on a great throw from Cam Ward, and was targeted 10 times on 44 snaps. So you're still going to be dubious throwing Calvin Ridley out there in a fantasy lineup, but this was a much needed bounce back game after 4 duds.
Yeah, I feel like the Ridley thing was just a preservation thing. He was banged up heading into practice there, and I don't think it's a change in preference. Chig made some good catches in those last 2 drives for Tennessee, but then Helm made another big one on that drive as well. So a beautiful throw to the corner, which I think got overlooked because the Ridley play was right before that there. Back-to-back great throws by Cam Ward there. By the way, Arizona's at Indy. They're 6.5-point underdogs at Indy, and I wouldn't be shocked if they won outright because that's Arizona. As soon as you start to as soon as you count on them, they fail badly. As soon as you write them off, they play well. So they're like the ultimate stay away team. Period. Just stay away from them. They're just nothing good can come from dealing with them. All right. We are brought to you by MegaSports Progressive. Elevate your game with the ultimate sports contest, MegaSports Progressive. Dive into a world of excitement with 3 progressive jackpots and a chance to win big every week and every month. We're rewarding 1,500 lucky winners, distributing over $50,000 in monthly prizes. All you do is answer 15 daily sports props. Add up your correct responses for the week's cash prizes and tally the week's totals for huge monthly cash rewards. MegaSports Pro makes it fun and easy to join. This is a thrilling opportunity to be part of our growing community of sports enthusiasts. Sign up today and unlock a chance to win big every day, every week, and every month. Sign up is free, no commitments, no credit cards. Your first 9 days of play are free. Visit megasportspro.com today. After week 5, there were no undefeateds left in the NFL. We saw both the last 2 remaining undefeated teams lose at home as favorites. Let's start off the day one there. The Eagles losing to the Broncos after holding a 17-3 lead going into the 4th quarter.
Yeah, another just very weird game for the Philadelphia Eagles. The type of game that they've found ways to hang on and win earlier this season, for most of last season, but something just continues to feel off with Philly. Got off to a really good start. They're leading this game, 17-3 heading into the 4th quarter, get outscored 18-0 in the 4th. And, the thing that really jumped out to me fantasy wise is we saw Jalen Hurts throw the ball 38 times, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't really end up benefiting AJ Brown, who saw a lot of Surtain in this game. Was targeted 8 times, caught 5 for 83, which I guess you'll take that volume if you're an AJ Brown manager, but still not the payoff that you would hope for with a game script like this. And, despite leading by multiple scores for most of this game, Saquon Barkley carried the ball 6 times. 6 carries for 30 yards, which is fine. 5 yards per carry, not even enough of a sample to really say whether or not you could get the running game going. But Philly it's so weird week to week. Like sometimes it feels like they decide we're not going to throw the ball unless we absolutely have to. This week, for whatever reason, they're like, we're just not going to run the ball and see how it goes. And they kind of got bitten by it. And it's just been a really weird start for Saquon. This time last year, the numbers were significantly better. We're talking like 8 or 9 more fantasy points per game through the first 5 weeks last year than we've seen this year. No explosive runs, no true explosive games. I guess it wasn't really until like week 5, week 6 last year where he truly took off and felt like he was giving you, 120 and 2 touchdowns every week. But I don't really get the sense that the Eagles have like the same level of internal confidence that they did when they went on that run last year.
Yeah, and it's not the same offensive line that's just road grading every single week. It's not the same coordinator dialing up the great plays every single week. no continuity among their coaching staff. I think that's one of the things I think it's underrated at times. And the Eagles have gone through an extreme example of this. Keep in mind, they lost their offensive coordinator after losing to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That new coordinator didn't work out as well. They hired Kellen Moore for 1 year last year. He is now a head coach. So this is 4 in 4 years.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
No, it's tough. It's tough. It's what you live with when you're successful. And, Philly to me is still the team to beat until proven otherwise in the NFC. But it was still a little bit shocking to see them lose this game. Some weird calls on both sides. I thought Denver was kind of getting a bad whistle early in the game, had some calls go their way late. The late hit on Zach Bond, I didn't really love that call when you had a guy who to me was still kind of moving around, fighting for some yardage. Fantasy wise, a couple of notes here. RJ Harvey, had a really nice game against Cincinnati because everybody does, but you can't be encouraged here. Played only 14 snaps, no goal line work, no third down work, no 2-minute drill work. So we kind of continue to be confused about his usage. Seeing a lot more Pat Bryant for the Denver Broncos. He outsnapped Marvin Mims this week, was kind of right there neck and neck with Troy Franklin in terms of the wide receiver 2 snaps behind Cortland Sutton. Like we mentioned, another rough Saquon game. Did go 3 for 58 with a touchdown through the air to bail him out. Still the RB9 on the season, but again, this time last year was averaging 24.5 fantasy points per game. He's currently at 16.1. The Eagles, by the way, like I said, outscored 18-0 in the fourth quarter. They finished this game punt, and then of course ran out of time and had to try a Hail Mary after going up 17-3.
Yep. All this is true. And yet last year, if you remember, they got in week 4, they got blown out by the Bucs. They had a bye in week 5. They come back after that week 6, they beat Cleveland, but they were booed off the field in that game. They had no offense in that game. So here they are. They're 3-2 after week 6. They're getting booed by their home fans, shockingly. And then they went on this epic tear.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, it can flip just that quickly. Just the other note. Go ahead.
They got the Broncos, Vikings, or Giants, Vikings, Giants coming up these next 3 weeks. So there are some get right spots here, no question.
Yeah. So I wouldn't panic. I don't know what form panic would take if you were panicking about the Eagles trading Barkley. Maybe under the rule of over 300 touches, the next year could be damaging. There might be something to that. I still think there might be something a little bit to that on Barkley. If you spent like a top 5 overall pick on Barkley, you're not getting anything close to what you expected. Yeah. But I don't know how that manifests. Like what would a proper sale price of Barkley be even?
Well, are you doing like Barkley for James Cook? Is that the type of deal we're talking about? Are you trading him for Javonte Williams? Like, I don't know. I think if I made that investment in Saquon, it's been rough. He's still giving you 16 fantasy points per game. Like it hasn't been Chase Brown level or anything like that. I think you have to believe that it's like, all right, he hasn't tanked your season, So I think if you have Saquon Barkley, hopefully you're 3-2 right now, and you think times will get better, which they probably will. I don't think he's going to have a 6 carry game the rest of the way.
Right. And that's the thing is it's really tough to, sell properly, or even, you're trying to buy low on Barkley. What are you offering? I just, it probably exists out there. In fact, go to Yahoo. If you're in a Yahoo league, they have a trade center there. You can see the trades involving a certain player. I think it's one of the cool tools that they have on their league. So I would recommend you checking that out. Maybe you can see what the market looks like there. And first of all, I don't get that many trades in my leagues. Secondly,
no, me neither.
It's just they're savvy leagues. It's hard to see too many people panicking too much there. All right. The other game was the Sunday night game. The Pats upsetting the Bills 23-20. A brilliant second half by Drake May. A kind of disappointing performance all around for the Bills offensively. A stultifying first half or a 6-3 at halftime. Lots of turnovers, lots of penalties in this game.
Yeah.
I get the idea that the Bills just they didn't bring their A game that particular night. They've had a couple of not quite A games so far, though. So, again, you got to ask the question, how good are they really, truly?
It's a question I think we're going to keep asking because the schedule is just not that hard. They have a few more premier games. Like they play the Chiefs in a few weeks. They host the Buccaneers later in November. We'll see where the Bengals are at, by early December. And then they do play the Eagles late in the season. But I think Buffalo is still going to cruise to like 13 wins, even if they're not playing that well. But you could argue this is now what, four times in 5 games as I, excuse me, just lose my voice here. 4 times in 5 games that they haven't had their A game, you know, and I'm counting that Ravens game where they came back. I still think they're the best team in the AFC, combination of quarterback and schedule and just infrastructure that they have. But it leads into this bigger theme of they're just not, I don't know if there's a team right now where if you're one of these like second tier type of contenders, you know, if you're the Chargers or the Rams or the Colts or the Broncos or the Commanders, like, I don't know if you're like that scared of going to Buffalo right now, or going to Philly or going to San Francisco or KC or Detroit. I love that we have this parity right now. Like, to me, I don't think it's going to happen, but like a Buccaneers Broncos Super Bowl could happen this year. Like all these teams feel pretty close to each other. I think now might be the time to jump in on some of these like medium long shots to win the Super Bowl. You get the Broncos at 18-1, you get the Bucs at 20-1, like Seattle is 50-1. Again, would I pick those teams to win it? Not necessarily, but it seems feasible. You know, this game specifically, sloppy early on for Buffalo. Bills couldn't really run the ball. You know, this was one of those games that was kind of spotlighted as one of the bigger mismatches in terms of one team's running ability versus another team's shakiness against the run. And it was pretty shocking the degree to which really both run defenses stepped up, because the Bills' run defense hasn't been very good either. And, you know, between Henderson and Gibson before he got hurt and Ramondre, the Patriots were like barely getting 3 yards per carry. James Cook goes 15 for 49 without a double-digit rush in this game. I mean, that was every week. Like even as the Bills haven't played all that well, Josh Allen hasn't been playing at last year's level. If nothing else, you could depend on this running game to consistently rip off big plays and move the ball. And I thought that was something that you just were kind of waiting for it to come around, and it just never did.
How many times do you see a division rival take away the thing you like to do the most? I mean, I think this happens a lot. I think the Bills will be fine. I think there'll be plenty of bounce back opportunities for them. I'm not super worried about that. I'm trying to look to see who they've got this week there, but
they're at the Falcons.
Monday that's one of the 2 Monday night games. That's right. Yep. Only 3.5 point favorites at ESPN bet, 4.5 at DraftKings. So that's your range right there. Oh yeah. I still see them as the best team, but definitely not that overwhelming. Every year, Chris Liss and I do a side bet where one of us gets to pick 4 teams, the other gets the field to win the Super Bowl. Right now, I'd need a lot more than 4 teams to pick the 4-team side there, to specify the teams. Now, also keep in mind, we do this like week 13, week 14 or so is when we do this. So, you know, a little bit more definition to the season. Some more injuries kick in. But I mean, you see how quickly it changes. The Baltimore Ravens were the number 1 or number 2 betting favorite heading into the season. Now they're 1-4, staring at on the barrel of 1-5 as a 7.5 point underdog this week because no Lamar and no healthy defensive players whatsoever. So things can change in a hurry. That is for sure.
Still favored to win their division are the Ravens. And maybe that's a good seg into Texans Ravens here. We can go rapid fire through a few more of these games just to hit some fantasy notes. I mean, oh man, this was rough. This was about as badly as it could have gone for Baltimore. I mean, that line was still hanging around like 1.5 in favor of Houston. And I think it's staff picks, like 3 or 4 people were on the Ravens. I'm going to be honest. It's easy to say now. I just didn't really get the case. It's like the Ravens were already bad, like terrible defensively with all of their starters. Then you take away 6 starters on the defensive side of the ball. You take away Lamar. And I mean, I thought they'd put up more of a fight offensively than they did, but I just didn't see a case for the Ravens defense holding up. They gave up 400, or they're giving up, I should say, 408 yards per game so far on the season. This was the Ravens' worst loss in almost a decade, worst loss since 2017. They've only lost in the last 15 years, Jeff. I looked this up. They've only lost 16 games by 17 points or more, and 2 of those have come in the last 2 weeks. By comparison, in that same span, the Jets and the Jaguars have lost 58 games by at least 17 points. Like the Ravens just don't get blown out. And there's an obvious reason why this happened this past week, but it's nonetheless shocking. I mean, they gave up CJ Stroud's best fantasy game since week 12 of his rookie season in 2023. And Baltimore just couldn't do anything. First drive, you know, they put up a score and then just nothing the rest of the way. Very disappointing game for Woody Marks. You know, if you had told me Houston put up 44 points in a blowout, you would think, oh, probably a lot of Woody Marks, a lot of running the ball. No, 7 carries, 24 yards, 0 catches on 1 target. Hard to take much away from this game. You know, the Texans were playing backups at the end, but really disappointing in what should have been a great spot.
Yeah, I tweeted it out after doing the rewatch on this. Sometimes the score is not indicative of the game, that it's not as bad as it looked. No, it was every bit as bad as
was bad.
looked, the scores. It was a completely non-competitive game. No pressure whatsoever on CJ Stroud. The offense had its moments. They also had like the weird Mark Andrews catch that turned into an interception thing. They had a lot of that going on, but at the end of the day, I was shocked. I mean, I knew what they were up against, the Ravens were, and yet I was shocked at their level of non-competitiveness. I've never seen a John Harbaugh coach team look this overmatched and just look dead in the water. They just look like they've quit almost.
I don't want to be a sheep again on the Rams this week, but it's like, how does it not happen again? You know, you got a much better team coming off of a devastating loss. Like the Rams aren't going to lay down twice in a row, right? It's like the Ravens are going to be 1-5 coming out of this, and I they're still 19-1 to win the Super Bowl. They're still favored to win the division. Like there is a path here, thanks to what's going on in Cincinnati and the Browns being the Browns and nobody believing in the Steelers. But they're going to have to go on a run. They're going to have to get healthy. They're going to have Lamar playing at a crazy, crazy level the rest of the way, because if they're 1-5, I mean, they can really only afford probably 2 more slip ups the rest of the year to have any hope to make the postseason in the AFC. And, another big fantasy note, which I think this kind of gets lost in just the general disappointment that's been the Ravens. I mean, you got to be panicking right now on Derrick Henry, man. Week 1, 18 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 runs of 10 plus yards, 29.2 fantasy points in that game. Would have been over 30 had it not been for the fumble. Weeks 2 through 5, this is 4 games combined, 46 carries, 148 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 runs that have gone for longer than 10 yards, 30.1 total fantasy points over the last 4 games.
Production only Chase Brown and your mother could love. It's really bad. It's really bad. We got a lot more game reviews. A few more game reviews, a little bit of business to take care of. Also a super chat question. Let's hit this up real quick here on the super chat question. Fancy Meatball asks, I'm 5-0, lost Nabers and a PPR, start 3 wide receivers, also a dynasty. Should he trade Nabers and Pickens for JSN plus JSN and 27 R2?
Second round pick in 27.
Okay, yeah. I was like, what player is 27 R2? Is that some nickname I just don't know? Already has London, Debo, JMO, and Horton. What do you think, Nick?
I mean, if you're really gunning for it this year, then yes, you should do this. In a dynasty, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd be looking to give up Nabers and Pickens for that package. Like I do wonder if you could do a little better, because everybody loves Nabers, and I think you could probably get a better return for him. I mean, already having London, the idea of pairing him with JSN and then, kind of rotating in Debo or JMO on the matchup for that third receiver spot is appealing. But man, again, the dynasty component, if this was redraft, no question, but in a dynasty, I don't know if I would be willing to give up Nabers there. So it would probably be a no for me. I mean, you're 5-0 already. And obviously you've really only gotten one good game out of Nabers. That was like the Dallas game where he had like 37 fantasy points. Mm-hmm. So I would maybe try to shop Nabers around and see if you could do just a 1-for-1 with him. You're not getting JSN necessarily, but you could probably still get an impact guy. Also glad to see you have Torrey Horton on that roster, because I think he's going to be a monster in the future.
Yeah. The problem is, here's the thing though, London and Debo, their starts every week pretty much, but
for
Horton's fine. JMO is not fine every week. I've been living that experience.
He's been terrible.
Yeah. If you're in it to win it this year, so you're starting Pickens every week, but when CeeDee Lamb comes back, right, what sort of production are you getting from Pickens? I might do this, dude.
Okay.
I agree. Shop around first, see if that's your absolute best offer. But you're in it to win it this year. You're 5-0. Depending on how the rest of your roster is kind of lined up, I think I might consider that there. It's close.
Yeah,
it is. It's pretty close. But anyways, good question. Appreciate you on that. We also appreciate Chalkboard. Get cash in on all your NFL picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply choose more or less on your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time only, new players get $20 free with no deposit required. Yes, you heard that right. $20 free just on sign up. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into cold hard cash. Whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines, using the cash out feature to take your money and run, or hammering the daily promos, today is your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines. Get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports. Now available in 30+ states. Download Chalkboard today. Use promo code ROTONFL. That's ROTONFL to to get $20 free with no deposit required. Thank you to Chalkboard for their sponsorship. Also, we're on the BlueWire network. Here are their ads. All right. Thank you very much, BlueWire, for hosting us, as you always do. Nick, got a couple other games to rip through here. I want to talk a little Seattle-Tampa Bay. We kind of talked about it a little bit in passing a little bit, but I thought this was the best game of the slate this week. Best offense, at least. Defense, we'll see about that. But, man, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold really put on a show.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more exciting games we see all year, to be honest. And there's a ton to unpack here. Unsurprisingly, neither team was able to run the ball all that effectively. Seattle was pretty good on a per carry basis. Kenneth Walker got loose for a couple big plays, was at 8.6 yards per attempt. But this was a game that felt quarterback versus quarterback. Who's going to make the mistake? And, of course, ended up being Darnold on that final drive. Kind of a tough situation, gets hit and ends up making a bad throw over the middle. But a ton to unpack fantasy-wise. I was big on Rachaad White this week as a very, very viable RB2. It wasn't a huge day for him on the ground, but did Rachaad White things, 4 for 30 through the air, had 2 rushing touchdowns, outsnapped Sean Tucker 49-13, outcarried him 14-3. So we did see some Tucker, but this was pretty firmly Rachaad White's backfield. I don't really come out of this game feeling any worse about Seattle, to be honest. Either team could have won this game. Some big mistakes by the Seahawks early. They missed a field goal. They had that brutal fumble on the Jalen Milroe package play where he just pitches it behind Kenneth Walker. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka just continues to put up monster numbers on relatively limited targets, which is interesting. I mean, he's up to wide receiver 3 now on the season, behind only Puka and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he's 23rd in the NFL in team target share at 23%. He's 18th in targets. He's 21st in receptions. Like the volume has not really been there. He's not seeing these like 13, 14 target games. He's just been really efficient and ripping off big plays every single week, taking advantage of every opportunity. So still interested to see what that looks like, once Mike Evans is back. Chris Godwin was out there again a ton like he was a week ago. Didn't really do much. It was kind of the Egbuka show and a lot of checkdowns for Baker Mayfield and, getting Sterling Shepard involved as well, who's been a longtime target of his. On the Seattle side of things, if you need a tight end, I think you have to look at A.J. Barner. 7 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught all 7 of his targets in this game. And, week to week, there's going to be some volatility there, like any deep tight end. You're talking about touchdown dependency. Seattle uses 3 tight ends fairly interchangeably, Barner, Eric Saubert, Elijah Arroyo. But Barner's been the guy who's been most dependable week over week. Played 48 of 60 snaps in this game. Like I said, caught all 7 of his targets, up to 4 touchdowns now in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Very effective red zone guy. And the problem is with, he's like the glob of tight ends, though. He'll end up with 7 or 8 touchdowns on the year, probably. Maybe, every once in a while, a tight end has 10 touchdowns one year and they go back to 4 the next year. And Barner strikes me as maybe being that guy, but he's getting them now. He's proven to be reliable there. And the Seattle offense is good enough that he can get that. He's got that upside potential. Like, I'd rather have Barner the rest of the way than, say, Jonnu Smith, who, coming off the bye this week. I'm moving on from Jonnu Smith. That's one of the things I have been doing a little bit there. It was a great week for tight end pickups, by the way.
Yeah.
Darren Waller had a huge week. Theo Johnson had 2 touchdowns. You looked at Mason Taylor, very involved in the Jets passing offense. Yep. Barner, if you picked him up, did great, obviously, for you. And Tongas for the Niners also. A lot of good free agent tight ends this past week.
Yeah, 12 more targets this week for Mason Taylor, 9 catches, 67 yards. He's now got 25 targets over the last 3 games, creeping up on a 20% team target share. Still hasn't found the end zone. He's only been targeted twice in the red zone, which is a little bit of a concern, but 9 of his 20 catches on the year have gone for double-digit yardage. Like he's looking like the legitimate number 2 option behind Garrett Wilson in that passing game. Theo Johnson now leads all tight ends with 8 red zone targets on the season. We'll see how sustainable that is, but something to keep an eye on. And then even in this game that we're talking about, Cade Otton, I wouldn't say he went off, but 4 catches, 81 yards on 5 targets. You'll take that. High volume passing day for Tampa Bay. It's not always going to look like that, but there was a stretch in the middle of last season where Cade Otton was very viable.
Yeah, there was indeed. Dalton Kincaid, the leading fantasy scorer in tight ends this year, barely over Jake Ferguson and Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
So kind of noteworthy as far as that goes. Jake Ferguson, you and I were both all over him, and it's gone beyond our wildest hopes in terms of 48 targets on the year.
I mean, if you watch these games that CeeDee Lamb went out, they're running the Jake Ferguson raid. You're seeing a ton of targets. I think that'll regress once CeeDee is back, which I guess could be as soon as this week, but we'll see on that. Other tight end news, I just got a notification that Brenton Strange is expected to miss about a month with the injury that he sustained last night. So that's a big one. I mean, you're not necessarily starting Brenton Strange, but he was to the point where he was rostered in a lot of leagues. He to me is kind of like what Tucker Kraft was last year. Brenton Strange is this year, like on the cusp of becoming one of those dudes. So this is a tough setback for Jacksonville. I'm not sure there's really a direct pickup here. It's Johnny Munt and Hunter Long are kind of the secondary tight ends for Jacksonville. I guess I would lean toward Hunter Long of those two, but neither of those guys are close to the caliber of Brenton Strange.
No, but Brenton Strange was rosterable and now he's not, obviously. And so if you're looking to pick up Tongas or you're looking to pick up one of those other guys we mentioned, you look at Barner's probably still available in a bunch of leagues. He was like 11% rostered yesterday when we were looking. Okay, well now you have a clear drop. If you've got Strange,
yeah.
Okay, that's one of the guys you can go pick up after there. There's so many more things we could talk about. We're already at the hour mark, Nick. Quickly, is anything else you want to hit on the way out?
Yeah, let me just see what I can empty out of the notebook here. I mean, Dolphins-Panthers, I thought lived up to the chaos that I thought it would be. Pretty impressive come from behind win for Carolina. Trailed 17-0. You got the usual 2 Bryce Young turnovers early on. Rico Dowdle, of course, goes crazy. Played 47 snaps, carried or targeted on 26 of those. So we'll see if that can continue in terms of the usage. If Chuba Hubbard misses another game, kind of the usual for Tet McMillan in that one. Still hasn't found the end zone, made some big plays. It feels like the eye test has been better than the fantasy production so far. Not a whole lot in Raiders Colts, just another game that got away from the Raiders. And it feels like that team is kind of broken right now. Cowboys Jets, another very weird game. Cowboys put up a ton of points. It wasn't a high target game for George Pickens, but he found the end zone. Ryan Flournoy goes six catches for 114 yards on 9 targets. Now, Devontae Turpin did not play in this one.
Yeah.
We saw a decent amount of Tolbert out there, was targeted only once. Again, CD could be back in the next week or two, so I wouldn't read too much into that. And unless you got anything on Lions Bengals or Commanders Chargers, I guess we should touch on Krosky Barrett finally seeing some early game work and clearly once again looking like the best back in Washington.
Yeah, does this finally push the needle enough there that we can start, Bill, with confidence? I'm wondering because I think that one's, and because let's keep in mind too, the Commanders get a run funnel. They get the Bears coming to town on Monday night. That should be a very advantageous game. We'll see after the bye if they fix some of the run defensive issues. But we finally have enough of a carry share, a snap share that we can start, Merritt?
I hope so. I mean, it was a competitive game until late, and it never got totally out of hand. I know the Chargers ended up benching some starters, but it wasn't like this was just some sort of garbage time situation for Krosky Barrett. He did only see a 48% snap share, but saw an early down snap share of 64%, which is really encouraging. Again, played on the first 2 drives of the season, which he had not done until week 5. He got the lone goal line carry for the Commanders, and he's the big play guy for them. Like, he was jumping off the screen in the second half of this game.
Sure
so
was.
I hope that Washington sticks with that. Deebo Samuel was great again in that game, 8 for 96 and a touchdown. I think that could continue so long as Terry McLaurin is out. I think once McLaurin's back, we probably have to knock down Deebo a little bit, but really, really good matchup. And actually, I think a sneaky fun game coming up at the late game on Monday night, Bears Commanders. That should be a very good fantasy matchup for Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. A run funnel for sure. And the thing is, we got the dueling Monday night games again, Buffalo, Atlanta, and Chicago, Washington, both on the East Coast this time. So no late start. That will be kind of annoying, but we'll deal with it. I'll still watch both games there.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have, I believe, game 2 of the ALCS and game 1 of the NLCS going up against those two. So
we're gonna need more TVs.
This is going to be a 3 TV minimum. If you can get your hands on 4 for Monday, I would encourage you to do so.
Dude, I might have to force the issue with our ADU. I'm going to have a new office, and I'm going to have 3 TVs in the new office. May have to force the issue there. Maybe drag something in here.
Do whatever you can. This is an all hands on deck situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully it's an all hands on deck situation for you guys. Thanks so much for tuning into the RotoWire podcast and live stream. Nick and I will be back at you again next Tuesday. Tomorrow I'll have a guest. We'll talk about rankings for week 6. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening to RotoWire. Go get that RotoWire subscription. Promo code YouTube15 gets you 15% off any RotoWire subscription. As always, thanks for listening. Good luck in week 6.